Okay, cool. We'll just give it 1 more minute to wait for people to join the webinar, and then we can take it away.
Steve, just load your camera.
Perfect. We are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, so it can be found there as well. We'll give it another 20-30 seconds and then we can kick off. I think that's, people are coming in, but they will just catch up with us wherever we are. Okay, amazing. So I think we're good to go. And just obviously, good evening, everyone. I'd just like to thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm truly grateful for the continued support that we've received. And on both the Rabbi and myself, are excited to announce tonight's guests, Epstien and Stephen Helbron. I'd just like to play a quick clip tonight on who next week's guest would be before we jump into it. So if please, we can just play the clip and then we'll get right into it.
Really, there's no sound on the video.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort it out now.
And with vision, we'll see you reach exactly that goal at your next conference. I use a storytelling approach that is based on my own experiences, and my talk will take your audience on a roller coaster ride of emotions, packed with humor, inspiration, as well as the 3 universal laws that help me to navigate the unknown. Nurture your trust relationships. I guarantee you they will turn out to be the most significant relationships in your life. Appreciate what you've got, because there are hundreds, thousands, if not millions of people out there less fortunate than you are. If you give just a little bit of what you've got, you will get more than you can ever imagine.
Amazing, thank you for that. So obviously next week's guest is the amazing Han Wagner. Obviously our guest this evening, no introduction, I'll try my best to summarize their incredible achievements. Our host tonight was the co-founder and CEO of the Softline Group. Softline listed the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and had operations in Africa, Australia, the USA and Canada. Softline was then acquired by Sage in 2003. Arvin has been recognized for his entrepreneurial contribution to South African business and was a recipient of South Africa's Best Entrepreneur Award. He was also appointed to the judging panel for the 16th EY World Entrepreneur of the Year Awards. Arvin is now the chairman of Cash Connect and the co-founder and CEO of Tricolor Investments. Stephen Helbron needs no introduction. He's a chartered accountant who served as the global head of private banking, regional head of UK and Europe at Investec Bank Limited, as well as joint CEO of Investec Bank PLC. In July of 2013, Stephen actively participated in the consortium's acquisition of Cash Connect and is currently the group CEO. Stephen recently pioneered Cash Connect's most recent acquisition, which doubled their portfolio size and is regarded as a guru within the industry. Stephen has a wealth of knowledge and experience to share with us this evening, and we're so grateful for you taking the time to do so. So thank you very much. Thank you all for your time. Please also remember to leave your questions in the Q&A box on top of your screen, and Ivan will do his best to get to them all tonight. So over to you, Ivan, and thank you once again for your time.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks for that introduction. And hi, everybody, and welcome to tonight's show. I'm going to start off by asking, Steve, I just want to touch on a few points with you so we can share some insights with the audience. Obviously, I met you probably about 7, 8 years ago, and I was told you're a very intelligent guy. So I was out for spotting talent at the time, Stephen. So that Shabbat dinner I had at your house was most welcome. Thank you for that. And needless to say, we jointly purchased Cash Connect about 6.5 years ago. And you, gratefully took on the job as CEO in building the business. It's interesting if I look at your career, because there you spent many years coming out of graduating as a chartered accountant and a budding Springbok that you had aspirations of becoming, which clearly didn't work out, Stephen. But moving to Investec and being intricately involved in building the private bank, which was kind of groundbreaking. So you were one of those guys that were able to build the business with inside. Well, I guess that Investec was a small business at the time, but you then went on to grow these businesses with inside what was then a corporate. And after that, you then were able to move from that environment after spending many years and many successful years at Investec, and then going on to taking on the role as of Cash Connect. Now, I remember at the time, Cash Connect, we'll touch on it later, was a very small business. It was not much. It was, in fact, a business that was in slight trouble. And what you've done in the past 6.5 years, we will share some insights with the guys, is amazing. So well done. So I think just talk about how your time at Investec and how you made that transition from a large business to a small business.
Sure. So first of all, Ivan, what I would say is I remember that Shabbat dinner well, and I, it's actually my wife who I think invited you for dinner, and I must say that most of the good things in my life, most of the good things have been found by her. So I'm not really a socialite. I probably wouldn't have been at the dinner myself unless she'd forced me, but it was great, and I'm very grateful to her for that. So I mean, again, I think I'm just very grateful to having had the opportunity that I had when I was young. I was 26-year-old. I was a CA. I had my heart set on being an entrepreneur. Actually, I ran out of money. I had an overdraft. I remember in those days of about 15,000 Rand. I was trying to do entrepreneurial things. I went to a dinner party. There was a lady there. She said to me I should go for an interview at Investec. And one thing led to another. I joined Investec, I think, in end of 92. I was there for almost 19 or 20 years. And it was a real privilege. This was an organization with a great culture, great people, some fine leaders. And, in the early days, and I'm a little bit out of touch with Investec today, but I'm sure it's not too dissimilar, but it had a real entrepreneurial culture. And, I was able to learn very quickly from some very good entrepreneurs. And I was given a tremendous amount of freedom. And I think the more you developed within that organization, the more freedom you earned. And I was able to experiment and to grow entrepreneurially within that time frame. I think your question was how do you and I want to also say that anything that you achieve within those types of organizations, you don't achieve on your own. Investec had a very strong culture, and it also has got a very strong talent pool. So, I would say that, Ivan, on the contrary, if I look at yourself, you were a true entrepreneur. I mean, you bootstrapped from your garage. I had the luxury of the safety of an organization, albeit it was relatively small when I first joined. But, it's much safer to be an organization to be an entrepreneur within an organization. I say to today, when I talk to my own kids, I try and push them towards doing their own thing, very much so. But I still believe working in an organization for a period of time can grow you substantially. I think the challenge is just to make sure that you don't get stuck there. As for the transition, you know, I didn't find the transition too difficult at all. I think, you know, I left Investec in 2012. Myself, my wife, and kids actually traveled for most of 2012. And while, you know, while I was on the road, I started to already look for opportunity. You know, we raised some capital. We bought what was then Cash Connect in, I think we bought it in July 2017. Sorry, 2013. Which makes it almost what, just over 7 years ago now. And that, you know, the transition actually entrepreneurially I found to be quite refreshing. You know, in fact, I see it as a privilege. I've had an opportunity in my life to have different chapters, because you know, you can often land up in an organization and become, you know, a lifer. And not that I have any issue with that, but circumstances, you know, in my life led me to having a second chapter. And I've got to say, it's been incredibly refreshing. Sometimes I think to myself, I wish I'd done it a hell of a lot earlier. I certainly learnt, you know, a huge amount at Investec, and you know, that gave me, for all the things I did well and for all the things I didn't do so well, that gave me a tremendous start. You know, once I had left the group and had challenges outside from an entrepreneurial.
Stephen, it's interesting because, I mean, I look at myself where I started a business and then grew it over many years, took it public, then sold it into a large organization, then become part of the establishment of a corporate organization, and then moving back out again into entrepreneurship. So in your instance, there you were sitting in these beautiful, luxurious offices in the city of London. I'm sure you were delegating, well, probably knowing you didn't delegate much, but generally guys would be delegating to people. And I mean, you had everything that comes with being in a comfortable position. And then I remember when you came to Cash Connect, there you were in, was like a real like Dawnfontein, you know, style type office there outside Kalami, and with really, you were doing everything. So, and I mean, the entrepreneurial attributes of somebody who came out of a corporate and then, you know, going to your own business, it's an interesting one. And I think one can make the switch, because I've gone from there to there and back here. And I think the message to people out there, Steve, is that, you know, don't feel that you're stuck in, you know, in any situation. And if you have some aspiration and you have some drive and ambition, you know, you need to consider taking the opportunity. There are a lot of people in the, you know, online this evening watching this that are those people, young guys or young people in organizations where they may be a little bit anxious to take, and they want to do something on their own, but are kind of anxious and considering it. There are those people that have been inside of an organization for many years, you know, and also would like to feel that freedom of entrepreneurship. And then again, there's people that are entrepreneurs inside small businesses wishing they had the comforts of a large organization. So I think the attributes of an entrepreneur, Stephen, I mean, you've seen it there to the left and there to the right. I think they are similar attributes, I'm sure. And then, you know, we spoke about it. If you could add to it, what's interesting, what I think would be an interesting message for people, Steve, is, you know, sometimes you sit there inside an organization, you think, is this the right job? Did I get put in the right division? Am I doing the right thing? Should I find another job? And I think that analysis paralysis can be stifling at times. And it also is not too, it can be contrary to what one would want to be career enhancing, actually, and to your detriment.
Yeah, you know, Ivan, you spot on here. You know, the one thing that always strikes me, people often would say to, I'm sure people say to you, Ivan, how did you know what you wanted to do? How did you make it in life? And how did you even choose the business that you built? And I see it even with my kids today. You know, there's so many choices out there. But I have this question within Connect, and I remember this question within Investec, with people always grappling: am I in the right organization? Am I in the right role? But my view on something like that has always been the following: I've never sat and thought. You know, even in my days in Investec, there was a time I was given a role which was head of product, and then I was in IT, and then I was head of distribution. So I would move around, but my view was never to sit down and think, is this the right role for me? But rather focus on being you know, the best that I possibly could be within that role. So I had a philosophy in the early days, which was I wanted to super perform. So you tell me what it was that was required and I would do it. So I didn't really focus on whether the opportunity that I was focusing on was necessarily the right one. What I knew was that I would take the opportunity in front of me, do the absolute best that I can, die trying. And I knew that if I did it very well, I would be offered the next opportunity. And you can draw that analogy as well, not just in a corporate environment, but also entrepreneurially. You know, when we sat back and raised some capital and looked at buying a business, Ivan, and it would have been the same when you started Softline. We didn't sit back and say, you know, is Cash Connect the perfect acquisition? In fact, it was far from that. It was a small little business losing 24 million Rand after tax. It made about a 7 million EBITDA. It was in a corner shop in Midrand, and it had a very small customer base, and it didn't really have that much going for it. So, you know, there's that old analogy, you know, when you're looking for the perfect woman, you find her and she's looking for the perfect man. But we bought it, and we then we knew that if we build that business and we focus on it and we develop it as a platform, opportunity will arise. And so what I see so often now is, particularly youngsters who are very talented, they've got so much choice. So they spend so much time around, am I in the right role? Am I doing the right thing? Should I be an entrepreneur? Should I be in a corporate? If I'm in a corporate, am I in the right role? If I'm in a business, am I in the right business? Rather than taking what they have and taking that opportunity and driving it home, delivering it successfully, understanding that when you make a success of a business or a success of yourself in a business, opportunity finds you. And eventually, the right opportunity will land on your doorstep.
I think, Stephen, that's interesting because, often, and I'll reiterate, and I think it's a message you want to get across to people is if you are inside an organization or you are in your own business or you are trying something else, just, you know, you need to put your head down and often, certainly for those people starting businesses, where you start is not where you land up. So you start in one dimension and in one particular area, and you get going, and then you meet people along the way, and those people you meet along the way, be they suppliers, customers, or just, you know, whoever you interact with, will actually help reshape and shape the business in terms of where it starts to head. And you'll find that taking place. You saw that clearly at Cash Connect, you saw that happening, Stephen. You started to interact with suppliers, you started to interact with your customers, then there was customer demand, then there was a customer demand for a different type of product. And I think that does help shape the business in terms of its future direction. So, you know, I said it in the last chat not too long ago is, you know, everybody says, well, you've got to be lucky, and sure, you've got to be lucky. But you've got to, you know, the harder you work, the luckier you will get. It's the old cliche. But clearly in your own business, that is, I think having the staying power is essential, Steve. I've watched you operate, and I spoke about it last week. Now, I don't know if some of you on the line, you will remember this. What I said to you is, you know, you get presented with opportunities in life. There's good opportunities and there's bad opportunities. But generally, the only kind of opportunity is the one that you do with good people. And because if you choose the wrong person, and I think I even mentioned you on the broadcast, Stephen, when you take an average business, but you have the right team with the right chemistry, people that have a lot of integrity, honesty, and good character and drive, you'll turn a bad business into an amazing business. On the flip side, bad people and bad management will clearly turn a good business into a bad business. So watch out for that. I think that's important, Stephen. And I've watched you operate, and obviously you're probably not the easiest guy to work for because you do command a lot of sweat and equity into the business from people. But I've seen you also on the same side be fair with people. So just talk about what you expect of people in the business. And it's interesting for people to hear that.
Well, I've got to say, I'd start off by saying that I'm really fond of the people that I work with. So, you know, one would have, but really it's their value system that I would be fond of. But you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, it's and this was something I learned very early on at Investec. It's all about the culture and the feel of the place. And you know, the issue with values or leadership is it's something you do all of the time, 100% of the time. You know, so it's in your actions, it's in your words, it's in your language. I've always been a firm believer that language is a window into the soul. You can't portray a set of values, but have a language that doesn't reflect that. And I've so often seen leaders sitting at a function after a conference or after an event saying something that just doesn't resonate with the value system of the business that they run or the team that they lead. So I think I would absolutely agree with you. It is all about the people, but obviously it's not the part of that culture is obviously you need a very strong talent pool. Also, let me come back to your point. Ivan, when we bought Cash Connect seven odd years ago, it was a cash acquiring business in the SME space, but we saw it as an opportunity to, cash. Many people argue cash is on the wrong end of the digital economy. I remember even when we launched the card business in Investec in September '99, people were talking about cashless economies. It's interesting that today cash still represents well north of 50% of all transactions in this country. But we made that acquisition understanding that cash was an entry point to the SME space. We migrated quite quickly from there to a business that offered not just cash, but we put the bank in your store, you drop the money in our vaults, and you immediately had it available on your apps to make payments. From there, we developed a business that started to lend money to our customers because we could see the flow of their cash. And from there, we became a card acquirer. So now we could acquire our customers' cash as well as their cards and have all the data on their transactions. That in itself feeds our credit business. And then, of course, we were very excited with the acquisition of Kazang more recently, which enabled us to develop the business into the value-added service space, which is airtime, the electricity, gaming, money transfers, etc. So with the SME really being at the heart of what we do, cash being the entry point, we're now a business that has extended 600 million rands worth of credit in the last 18 months, including now during the COVID period, as well as being a card acquirer, cash acquirer, and a VAS provider. And we will, the business as we see it today, we already see more opportunity in terms of developing a marketplace for the SME, which is in line with the digital economy. But the philosophy is really very much one of we're always running 2 or 3 experiments. There's no issue with the experiments that fail. That's true entrepreneurship, and that's where our entrepreneurs actually learn more. We truly, and I'm a firm believer in this, is there's no issue with people making mistakes. And the other thing I want to say is that people need to feel secure in a work environment, not threatened. And if they feel secure, and I think that's the art of really good leadership, is when the people around you feel safe. And when they feel safe and they feel secure, then they're actually able to experiment. And not only are they able to experiment, but you bring the best out of them. Now, I've tried my best to be an entrepreneur in time, and I've made some mistakes, quite a few, in fact. I mean, I think I did some good things when I was in Investec, and I did some things that aren't so good. But that's, at the end of the day, that's what entrepreneurs do. If you look at some of the best entrepreneurs, and I put you in this category, Ivan, many entrepreneurs fail several times. They have 4 or 5 capital raises, 4 or 5 initiatives, even more, until eventually they crack it. It's the nature of the beast. But what they are is risk takers. But I think what defines them more than anything, and this is something which I know I have and sometimes wish I had less, is the tenacity. Is just tenacity. It's never giving up. But I think with that, sometimes you also need to know when enough is enough. So these are the things that I've learned, and for where I am now in life, I just love being able to share this with people who have a long runway. And I think today, if you're young and you're living in South Africa, and I hear people talking all the time, every geography has headwinds and opportunities. South Africa certainly has its headwinds, but my goodness, it has a lot of opportunities. And if you're here and you can't go anywhere else, I think it's a very fertile ground in terms of opportunity. And if you think you're going somewhere else, there might be less headwinds, but there probably won't be as much opportunity, and probably a lot more competition. So at the end of the day, I think being an entrepreneur is not just about risk taking. it's also about choice. And not just about choice, but about making that choice and being able to say, being clear about what you're not, either as an individual or as a business. And then sweating your strategies, not being schizophrenic, either as an individual or as a business. So when you choose to go down a path, you need to deliver the strategy. You need to deliver a momentum. So that with that consistency, the market, your client, your segments, your products become consistent, and you develop something that people can develop an affinity with. So those are the attributes that I think are very important. I wish I had all my time again, because if I knew now what I knew then, I probably would have done things so differently.
Yeah, but Stephen, that's I mean, and that's an interesting point. Well, I mean, I think hindsight for everybody would be amazing. All of us, you know, we wouldn't have made those mistakes we made all along the way in getting to where we get. But Stephen, I do agree with your point in terms of, you know, South Africa, which has, we all know, has a number of headwinds, but clearly has a lot of opportunities as well. But there's no perfect opportunity, and I think it's important for people to note that if you are looking for the perfect opportunity or to size up the perfect opportunity, it's going to put you in a tailspin. It's going to delay your plans. It's going to hold you back. So I think if you have a reasonable idea and you feel that passion within your heart, and clearly you need to believe in yourself and have an abundance of belief in yourself, you can do it. You know, Stephen, the part I like that you touched on was how people should feel within an organization. And you're talking now Cash Connect, which employs several hundred people today. But I mean, how much emphasis do you put on culture in an organization? Because we're going to turn to COVID just now in the pandemic and where we are at the moment. So we're going to talk a bit about that, because people are concerned about that. And what people are really concerned about, I hear it all the time, is how's the pandemic going to long term affect their company? How's the pandemic going to affect the equity markets long term, which I'm sure none of us can answer. How's it going to impact the property market long term? When are we coming out of this? There's a lot of insecurities. People are getting bored at home as well. People are tired of this. I mean, it's you know, it's tough being at home for so long. It's tough, you know, being in an analysis and being in a paralysis as well, you know. And there's a lot of experts on this, and a lot of people don't know, you know, really don't have the answers. So I want you to touch on that. But just talk a little bit about your emphasis on culture in an organization, how important that is to you. And then once we finish that, let's turn, you know, the people are welcome to ask questions. Then we'll turn a bit to COVID and the impact on business worldwide and in South Africa.
Yeah, so Ivan, you know, I come from, you know, as you know, I mean, I grew up in an Investec stable where it was all about culture. But you know, what is culture? I mean, to me, it's the feel of the place. The bottom line is it's got to feel great. You've got to feel energized, safe, secure, challenged. It's got to bring out the best in everybody, and the best in the individual. So culture is amazing, but it's not enough. You need to be able to execute ruthlessly. You need strong talent, and that will thrive in the right culture. And really, what is culture? I think culture really, it's the mirror to leadership. It's the mirror to leadership teams. If people say, you know, when you walk into any organization, there's the visual aspect of culture. Very quickly, you can look around and you'll see, you know, open plan, cornered offices. You can tell by the furniture, the painting, the artwork, the way the office is laid out, you'll tell a lot about the culture. And then the language of the people who work there, how they talk about each other, how they talk to each other. So you'll get the smell of the place very quickly. But I can tell you what I've learned over time is the culture always reflects the quality of the leadership, or let me say the culture of the leadership. So it's a mirror. And, you know, so I think it is absolutely critical, but it's not enough to win. You know, I think sometimes organizations think, you know, spend a huge amount of time on their culture and they think it's enough to win. Today, most organizations, I think in the early days, culture was a competitive advantage. Today, I think it's a hygiene factor. It's a given. You're not going to keep great talent if you don't have the right culture. I mean, even today, if I have a look in the financial services space, and some people wouldn't like, you know, wouldn't like what I'm going to say, but you know, a lot of the creative talent isn't necessarily sitting in the banks anymore, it's sitting in the fintechs. And the fintech culture is quite different to institutional or organizational culture. But when we say culture, I'm going to take it back to the feel of the place, the freedom, the experimentation. At the heart of all of that is true entrepreneurship. And you know, Ivan, it's not everyone's an entrepreneur. I mean, I think the defining feature to be an entrepreneur is you need to be a risk taker. And not everyone's comfortable with risk.
No, thanks, Stephen. I mean, you're right. I think, you know, some time back, I mean, I've seen it in our own business, how culture played such a vital role in the organization. But I think also culture led to a winning streak as well. So as you said, it created a winning streak, a winning aspiration amongst the people in the organization. Yes, Stephen, I mean, I've been fortunate in, you know, in the situation to have started, you know, a business with partners and then build that culture up into what we defined as a culture. And I know you came into an organization where there was a certain type of culture, but then it evolved with guys like yourself and others coming into it. So it's different. I think Steve, we could just turn a little bit to what's going on in South Africa and globally at the moment. Sadly, this pandemic, we've seen it now escalate in South Africa over the past week, more so in Gauteng. And I think there's a lot of anxiety amongst people, you know, at home. People have also got used to working at home. I'll say it again. I said it last time that I just can't see how you can build a culture over Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Now it works because we've had no choice to work like that. So given no choice, this is the only way you can work for now. So you have to do that, and you have to keep businesses going, and it's worked. I think in some aspects, it's created an increased focus, less time wastage. The flying around's been interesting for some people that live on planes, and I think it's been different for. I mean, I think for families who've had people absent on a continual basis from a travel standpoint, it's been an interesting dynamic to have people back at home, and I think it's been good for family time and all that. But some will argue that they'll say it's actually been bad for family time. They're getting, you know, again, maybe the divorce lawyers will be busy after the lockdown. Not quite sure. So, Stephen, what's your feeling with this pandemic and the impact of business and equity markets and property?
You know, Ivan, let me start off by saying I think everybody by now is very tired of the perpetual commentary from a COVID perspective. I mean, I've always been of the view that, you know, South Africa, you know, look, I think we had an early lockdown and a good lockdown. The South Africa is not the UK and the US. We don't have the relief programs that they have. We also start off with a very high unemployment rate. So I think the approach now, which is to learn to live with COVID, and the opening up of the economy was really the right choice for the country. I'm personally, I mean, I'm devastated when I see how it's impacted small businesses, sometimes even larger businesses, and too often very good people who work in those businesses. Now, you know, to date, it's not really COVID, but it's been the lockdown that's done the damage. We're all hoping and praying that South Africa comes through this with less of an issue. But I think that the new norm for us now is to live with COVID. So we have to protect ourselves, do everything that we possibly can to protect our families, our stakeholders, and our businesses. But come out of our cocoons and learn to live and work with this. If I have a look at you know, what we've done at Connect, you know, we had April was a very tough month. In May we saw a restoration, and you know, now that we're coming to the end of June, we are almost back at pre-COVID type levels. Ours is a business that does focus very much on the essential services, but we're starting to see people come out. So what I will say is this: is that, you know, you keep hearing people talk about life will never be the same. I disagree with that. I think you know, just like we learned a lot from 9/11, life went on. There are many things that came with us as life went on, and I think life will also carry on. There will come a time again where we go to restaurants and we stay in hotels and we fly and we socialize and we do all the things that we used to do, but we'll take with that many of these learnings. So I don't think that life has changed definitively. I think that we will take a lot of these learnings with us, hopefully. And there's a lot of environmental learnings that I think we take from this. There's a lot of learnings that we get in the workplace. But I for one agree with you. I think it's initially all of us were quite amazed how effective we were working from home. But as the weeks go on, in larger organizations, it's very difficult to connect to everybody. And you know, connectivity is absolutely critical. The emotional connection to people, which is part of that culture that you refer to, Ivan. It's very important to get that resonating throughout your entire organization. So I look very much forward to, you know, we're still got everybody working from home, although other than those people who need to be in the office and certain teams, so the offices are depopulated. As soon as it's safe to do so, you know, we will open it up. But I do think we'll have a healthy hybrid going forward, which people will have learned from. But I would say to people, you know, there's obviously a lot of hardship that comes from this, and a lot of lessons and a lot of opportunity. But I don't. I think South Africans are also incredibly resilient. So I'm sure that we'll come through this, and you know, we need to just face the challenges that it brings. And South Africa is not unique. I mean, as everyone knows, the whole world is going through this. We have very unique problems here, and I think South Africa is going to be hit in a very unique way. But I'm also absolutely amazed at how South Africans have pulled together in order to come to the assistance of the needy.
Yeah, I know, and I know you've been involved, Stephen, through, I think, one of your subsidiaries in delivering the food parcels, and you've seen it firsthand from your guys going into certain of the areas where that's been needed. So I think that's been a pretty interesting exercise. Well done.
Well, actually, it was, you know, we were just lucky enough to work with the Mashledi Foundation. So that's our Kazang business, where we using our network into the VAS services and Spaza community. We were able to help the Mashledi Foundation in the provision of food vouchers and food to very needy communities. We're actually looking to do that again very soon, I think in a few days' time in Tembisa. But yes, that went very well.
Yeah, that's and well done, because you touched the lives of thousands. Stephen, just an interesting question from a guy, Clive Beliski, and he said that he agrees with you that you really can do anything that's placed in front of you, and I think that's part of the attributes of being an entrepreneur, Clive. Clive said he was retrenched in 2000 from a corporate at the age of 55. He then saw the opportunity to go into FMCG, an agency. 20 years later, he's grown it tremendously. Well done. And being 75, your dilemma is, as you say, you've got nothing else. Business is your life. What do you do? Well, before Stephen answers that, Clive, I'll tell you, just keep going. And if you've got to keep going into your 80s and 90s, don't stop, because, I mean, it's a great sense of purpose for you. So why would you? You've got a successful business. And unless you financially want to take something off the table, or you're happy with the earnings you take out of it, it's doing what you need, well, keep going on, and maybe you'll see it through to your late 90s. So good luck. I don't know if you agree with that, Stephen. I'm not one to box off and then move on to the golf course, but you know, that's other people's choices.
Look, Ivan, I think work becomes part of your purpose. I mean, it's not your sole purpose, but it's, you know, I must share with you, there was a period, I think for 2012, I couldn't actually wait to not work in 2012. I was I was looking so forward to it after 19 odd years at working at Investec. And you know, there's a saying, an idle mind is the devil's playground. You know, so if you've been obsessed with a business day and night for years, and suddenly you have a freedom. Now, I try to become the best dad, the best husband, the best this, the best. In fact, I think I almost killed my kids. My wife eventually said to me, you know what, get out of my house and find a job, do something. And so that's, I think that's why she invited you for dinner. But yes, I think it is part of the purpose. But what I would also say, Ivan, you know, I know some people who are 20, but 75. And I know some people who are 75 but 20. And it's the former that is such a waste. You know, when you're 20, be 20. Take risk, experiment. Don't worry about what's behind you. Worry about what's in front of you. You know, people always say, is it difficult to make it in life? And I don't actually think it is. I think, first of all, the difference between those who do and those who don't is well, the difference between those who think they can and those who think they can't is they're both right, for starters. If you think you can't, you can't. If you think you can, you can. But, you know, it's all about the sacrifice you're prepared to make. People say, you know, it's so difficult to make it. Well, it's not really. It's really, the question is, are you prepared to make the sacrifices? Because if you're prepared to put the hours in and all the sacrifices that go with it, I'm assuming you have a reasonable amount of talent. Because the point I'm making is, Ivan, talent isn't the answer here. You've got to have a reasonable amount of talent, but then you need a work ethic. Talent without work ethic is nothing. Work ethic, obviously, with no talent is a problem, but work ethic with a little bit of talent goes a hell of a long way. So I see youngsters today, again, you know, saying it's difficult, and I don't think it is that difficult. You know, it takes us back to the point in the beginning. You know, I remember when I asked you, why did you get into software? And it was simply, you know, maybe you want to tell your story again, but it wasn't by design. I mean, you met somebody, you saw what they were doing, you were in a workplace, you're naturally an entrepreneur, they were making good money, off you went, and you built a great business. It's like, why Cash Connect, or why, you know, so, or even if I look at why I landed up investing, because I ran out of money and I was on an overdraft, and the entrepreneurial things I was doing, I wasn't living at home, I had to go get a job. So the point we made right up front, which is, don't waste your energy too much looking for the opportunities. When you do find one, take it and run it over the line. Do it so well that the next opportunity finds you, whether it's in a corporate or whether it's a business. Because when you buy a business, you're in the game. You know, I'll give you the analogy. It's like if you invest in the stock market at the right time, it doesn't really matter so much which stock you buy, you're in the market. If you're in the market at the wrong time, that's a problem. But if you're in the right time, so you've got to get in. And if you're an entrepreneur, then back yourself and experiment, and you'll allocate your capital to various experiments, but you need to be in the game. The big thing is when the experiments work, is then you've got to be a risk taker and allocate more capital.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Stephen. And you know, I heard it the other day, actually. Somebody said to me, I'm not sure the time's right for the opportunity, because if I look at our kids, it was different when we were there. And I think that's actually not a fair comment, because every generation will tell the next generation how tough it was when they were young. But every generation will present its own unique opportunities. So I can't see why that wouldn't happen. And so don't get caught on, well, that generation said that, and well, it's different. So I'm not sure the timing's kind of right. It would have been good 20 years ago. Not true. This is a different 20 years period, and they're different opportunities, and the same opportunities will prevail. Okay, just in a different format. I mean, Nicholas Avnet, you asked a question. If we were currently in the 20 to 35-year-old group living in South Africa, where would we deploy our time, or what would we do? I know, Steve, you've got reasonably fixed ideas about, you know, what industries are changing or making a difference in the world, where the sweet spots in the world are, you know, be it in science, chemistry, tech, as opposed to, some would say banking was a fantastic business, and still is in some ways, because fintech's now pushing the boundaries of banking as well. So that's, you know, that's tech aligned with banking. But you've got, so what would be your advice to somebody in their 20s, early 30s?
Yeah, just by the way, I'll just reflect on one thing that you just said. You know, Investec was a very good story within the banking space, particularly in the early days. And I remember people saying, you know, that was a function of the time. You couldn't do that again today. But, you know, I suppose the more modern version today is look at a Capitec. It's not that old. I remember when Capitec came to this market, it was a tiny organization, and they've done, I think if you put your money into Capitec 5 years ago, it's probably worth 6 to 7 times today. It's one of the big 4 banks in the country. Of course, knocking them off their perch today are all the fintechs potentially, and digital banks. But you know, if I was 25 and 35 today, again, Ivan, I think what would I be doing if I was in South Africa? Well, first of all, you know, if you look, I think I'd probably be putting a lot of my energies into the digital economy. I would, to exploit that opportunity, I would buy a physical world business with customers and then look at how to combine that with the digital economy that I can get out of the starting blocks. Pretty similar to what we're doing with Connect, but similar to what a lot of people are doing. Now, I was reading an article today just on crime generally in this country. And, it was actually the headlines of the SABRIC reports. So I was having a look at credit card and debit card and digital fraud in South Africa. And what was interesting is to see that whilst there's a lot of physical crime in South Africa, so you still have syndicates who conduct organized crime for physical cash or goods. The reality, though, is that with the transformation of the digital economy, cybercrime has absolutely dwarfed physical crime. Let me give you an example of that. Cash losses in this country last year, if you take ATM hits, cash in transit hits, burglaries, bank robberies, came to just over 300 million rand in this country. Yet cybercrime, and well, let's say debit card and credit card fraud was 1.1 billion, and digital fraud, which is online banking, mobile apps, came to about another 300. So you had 1.5 billion of cybercrime and fraud crime in debit card, credit card, and online banking versus 300 million of cash crime. And the reason really is that cybercrime transforms time and proximity. And also, I suppose, the type of people that are prepared to use a gun and commit a crime are very different to the type of people who are going to sit at home. So I think, to answer your question, I think I would first of all push entrepreneurship and risk taking. I think I would very much promote trying to do your own thing, but obviously growing. And I would combine the efforts of buying a physical business, a business with physical clients as a platform in a space that I was interested in. And we're going to say that again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I would combine that with the digital economy. So you can see the wave. This whole digital wave is very strong. And I think if you are very focused about what you do and you combine the physical and digital into a space that's relevant, I think there is enormous opportunity in this market. We are certainly seeing it. I think part of the problem that we now have at Connect is too many opportunities and too little capital. I mean, the issue always is, you raise too much capital, you dilute yourself to nothing. I think whilst there are lots of headwinds and risks, there is tremendous opportunity right now in not just in these markets, but in a lot of markets. So that's how I would answer it.
But Stephen, that's interesting because it's also applicable. So if you look at where medicine and science is going, I mean, even in the field of medicine, how the digital economy and digitization is going to play a huge role going forward. So that whole field's changing. So professions that were super traditional in the past, I mean, also changing phase. And I think one that's going to really change dramatically is going to be the medical field from a digital standpoint. Steve, you talked just before we go on, you spoke about cash. Why is this? Everybody says, like with COVID now, is cash a real problem? I mean, people out there are wondering, should I be touching cash? I mean, I know you're collecting cash, but does it carry the virus? What's your opinion on it?
Well,
and credit card, and then there's also fingerprint.
Yeah, look, I mean, well, first, let me say this. I don't know if you've seen recent. First of all, I mean, cash is absolutely safe. There's the risk of currency versus a credit card, touching a credit card or touching a digital pad or even a smartphone to make a scanned payment. It's been shown now, the science has shown that the pathogens, whether it's on currency card, a mobile phone, a smartphone, you have equal risk. I mean, the reality is you need to wash your hands, sanitize. You've got equal chance from touching goods or any surface. So currency carries very little risk. And I think it was actually the World Health Organization who came out with a statement. And now most of the reserve banks around the country have come out very strongly in favor of currency. So I think, it's absolutely safe. And the reality is, Ivan, we've seen that. This month we processed, close to 6.5 billion of physical cash. So and our card business was actually more affected. I think it might have to do with non-essential trade, but I think people are a lot more comfortable today with cash, and cash carries very little risk. It's absolutely safe, and it carries no more risk than touching a packing basket or touching a credit card or a digital pad, as I said. And your smartphone, by the way, even though you scan and pay, your smartphone is one of the things that we need to be most careful of in terms of pathogens, and just in terms of it being, you know, at the center of almost everything that we do when we're touching and playing with that phone. So I think it's a bit of a non-event. It's really become a non-issue.
Thanks,
and I think most retailers are comfortable with that today. So it's quite interesting, Ivan. You know, one thing I have seen is it's been, you know, today we're in the digital space, so we're in card and we're in credit, but we have a cash business. We've seen a lot of businesses actually being quite opportunistic. In other words, you know, COVID is a great opportunity to try and push, you know, people away from cash towards digital. But you know, again, I think the resistance, particularly in our economy, to digital has been very much around the things that I refer to here, which is, first of all, the fraud and cybercrime. As I said to you, credit card and debit card fraud and digital fraud in this country is running at about 1.3 billion a year versus cash losses at 300. So it's 5 times the difference. Fees are high. Privacy is eroded. So, you know, there's a democracy of payment. You know, the reality is the ultimate instrument of financial inclusion is currency. If I give anybody 100 Rand, they can participate in the economy without a utility bill or a FICA. So I think it's a very important part of the democracy of payment, as is card, as is digital, as is all mechanisms of payment. But I think that's really a non-event. It's proven to be safe, and I think the consumers are very comfortable with that, as are most retailers now becoming that. People who are trying to drive the digital economy, obviously it's convenient to push the fact that cash is a COVID risk, but the reality is so is a mobile phone and a card and a PIN pad, etc.
So, okay, Steve, just turning to one of the attendees online has asked a question. He says, I'm 30 years old, sitting at home, working in a corporate. I have a great idea. How does one go about executing? So I'll tell you how you go about executing. Firstly, if you have a great idea and you're bored at what you're doing, then you need to take effect of your idea and then make it happen. But, you know, what advice would you give? My top-down advice would be, take the opportunity and run with it. Is it viable, and can you monetize it in the future? So look at that, and then find some people that you can work with that will help you turn your passion and idea into reality, and yeah, run with it. So if you have the means and you're able to, and you've got the energy and you're physically capable, well, the question is, why wouldn't you do it? So my advice to you is yes, do it. Steve, one of the other guys was talking, you know, obviously you've been involved in Coty, and we'll talk just very briefly about it because, you know, it's not something that most people want to hear. But Alon Malamed was asking that, you know, with your traditional banking experience, seeing Coty coming into it, like what role, how will that change banking? And maybe just briefly touch on what Coty is before you answer that question.
Okay, so Coty is really a cryptocurrency, but I think the question is more relevant around digital currencies. You know, there are reserve banks around the world today that are already experimenting, running sandbox experiments with digital currencies. So, you know, the world of crypto is here, and it's here to stay. Again, like many things, I don't think it's a case of crypto taking over the world. It will enter the democracy of payments and currencies. It's early days. There's been a lot of regulatory backlash in the space of crypto. But crypto today in the form of stable currencies, linked currencies, that's linked to a commodity or linked to a currency, are starting to get a real grip on reality. And I think it's not going to be, there are already certain countries around the world that have issued a digital currency, but crypto is an exciting space. So you know, I think from an entrepreneurial perspective, there are a lot of businesses that have done well, and obviously there've been a lot of startups that haven't made it. But like any gold rush startup economy, it goes through the same cycles of regulatory impact. You're going to have some rogue businesses, but crypto is starting to find its space. But I think the very early assumptions that cryptocurrency would become a global currency around the world, replacing all currencies, is really a nonsense. But there are some very, very successful crypto businesses today.
Thank you.
Coty, the actual Coty, which is currency of the internet, I think has developed itself into a reasonable payments platform. It was one of the early cryptos, but it's been a very, very tough space. Remember, in that space, it's not only are those startups, but they are innovators. So it's one thing being a startup in a space which has got which has been established and is conventional. When you're starting up in a space where you're innovating from scratch, you've got two risks: startup and innovation. So I take my hat off to people in that space. There's not an easy space to be.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Stephen Group, I mean, I'm going to answer your question, but you know the answer pretty well. I mean, Stephen asks, being a banker at heart, and I come from the software industry, do you look for annuity type income generating businesses? Well, Steve, in the software business, I mean, those were the businesses. I mean, your whole business model was annuity income. And I think banks are no different to that. The banking sector is the same. The banking sector tries to extrapolate, recurring revenue out of every single customer and add to that customer. So I, for one, certainly think recurring revenue businesses are great. They underpin your expense base within a business. They create a comfort level, okay, for the year to come, because you'll start off January, your recurring revenue flow. We had thousands and thousands of users throughout South Africa using our pastel accounting products who still do it. And you knew in January what your approximate fee income was going to be, or license fee for the year, just on your existing customer base. And then there was obviously the new sales that would come along every month and kick that up for you. So fantastic, safe type of business to be in. And I think the bankers invented that with their fees and interest rates. So Stephen, is there, in conclusion, because we've got like another minute or two to go, I mean, you go first and then I'll go afterwards. Just a message to people. Now, bear in mind, there are not any South Africans online tonight watching this. So there'll be people from outside of South Africa watching. And I think currently the dynamics that exist in the UK today and Australia as well as the US are slightly different, obviously developed versus third world type environments or underdeveloped countries, So you just maybe just a message and, some words of inspiration, Stephen.
Yeah, sure. So Ivan, just on that point of recurring revenue, if I can say that recurring revenue is really about continued relevance. I today would see that more from a customer perspective. So as the recipient, we see it as recurring revenue. As the customer, for me, it's about your continued relevance. If you aren't continually relevant and you have a recurring revenue, then as a customer, I see that as a tax, which I wouldn't be that keen on. So I think today, building businesses, where you want to focus on a continued annuity, that the focus has to be on continued relevance. Then I think, Ivan, I think if I was to really want to double down on one point that we've made here today, in terms of, I understand we've got a younger audience. What I would again leave them with that one point, which is, don't spend too much energy deliberating on all of your choices. Make your choice, double down on your choice, make a huge success of it, and you'll have more choices. You'll have more opportunities. I want to make the point that I still see too many people in no man's land for too long. Spending years deliberating over the choices that they still need to make or made. So that would be the point that I would make. I see these times as very difficult, but quite exciting. Any time where there is, a real change is a time when there's real opportunity. So it's tough, but but that is the time that entrepreneurs are able to to actually deploy capital and build businesses based on new opportunities and waves, which only the type of rupture that we're seeing right now can cause. So
Thanks.
as I said, I see so much opportunity now. The issue really for us is always capital, talent. And then, you know, as I said to you up front, it's I just wish I had that much more time.
Yeah, well, Stephen, I mean, I'm told you have still quite a lot of time to go, so you'll still be.
What I really want to say is, you know, business is exciting. It's got to be your passion. It's fun. Winning or losing in business is fun. It's hard to lose, but you've got to understand that you've got to be agile. So when you're losing, you've got to adapt and reallocate. But a loss is a loss. A loss doesn't make you stupid. A loss doesn't make you irrelevant. A loss doesn't make you a klutz. A loss grows you. In fact, when people work for you and make a loss and make a mistake, what you should be assessing is, you know, how much did they learn? You shouldn't let them go. They've learned on your money, on your capital. But I would say to people today, enjoy the game of business. It's so much fun. Take the risks, allocate the capital. To your point, Ivan, there was a chap who said he's got a good idea. So I would go one step further. You know, having a dream about building a boat is different to building a boat. Anyone can dream. Anyone can dream. But can you build? And can you make the sacrifice? So take your idea, get relevant people in a room, build a business case, allocate the numbers, and go out and tell the world that you'll give them 15% for X million, but you'll keep 85 and you'll deliver the business, and you'll use that equity to bring good people in. You've got to be able to sell that story, but don't waste yourself and not do it. There's nothing worse than having all the good ideas and never doing something with them. Business is fun. It's not a game. Well, it is a game, but it's a passion. And so I think whether you're if you're in a corporate, hopefully it's a corporate that creates that space for you. And as I said up front, I was incredibly privileged to have a wonderful time at Investec with some incredible people. And it was an organization that gives that freedom. And I was also lucky enough to be able to have a completely different chapter in life. And I'm loving that piece. And I would be saying to young people today, you know, when you're young is when you should be taking your risks. So hone your skills, focus on the areas that you want to develop, and give it a crack. You know, as I said, entrepreneurs with the best pedigrees are often entrepreneurs who've had serial failures, but ultimately come through.
Thanks, Stephen, and thanks for your time this evening. Great to hear that, and a good message to end off with. I too will reiterate what I said last time, is that take a good idea, and whether you're somebody in business, whether you could be an electrician, you could be a doctor, you could be somebody who's in nursing, whatever you're doing, whatever career you're in, and those that lead to entrepreneurship, those that lead to intrapreneurship, which is what Stephen was, an intrapreneur to start and became an entrepreneur in his second chapter. Make the most of it, and you can build your success both ways. And success is, you'll know when you're successful, you'll feel it in your heart. But one message I will give is never give up and never stop believing in yourself, because the minute you stop believing in yourself, you've given up and you've lost the race. So best of luck to all of you, and I hope the next few weeks ahead for all of us here, certainly in South Africa and elsewhere, is a lot easier, and we don't have to go through such tough times from a COVID point of view. So thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, Ivan. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Rabbi Mazinta.
Great. If I could just sign off and just sign off the talk. Firstly, what an interesting discussion, and an exceptional panel and exceptional event. And firstly, thank you, as Stephen said, to the Chabad, to the Rabbi, and to all the sponsors that made it possible and have shown their endless support during and empowering the leaders of tomorrow. During these unprecedented times for all of us, there's so much uncertainty for us as a country, as a community, and as families going forward. Tonight, we've had the privilege and fortune of listening to and learning from two exceptional businessmen and their respective ideas of discovering opportunities in this current economic climate. personally, I've learned a fortune from you guys tonight, knowing Ivan personally and listening to you, Steve, on these lessons will stick with me in my career, as I'm sure all of you will. As entrepreneurs, businessmen, businesswomen, families and friends from around the world, let's use the sense of passion, tenacity, and motivation mentioned tonight as a springboard to continue striving towards finding the gap, exploiting opportunities, and maximizing our potential, which will lead us to making a difference in our ever-changing world. A huge, huge thank you to you, Stephen. A huge thank you to you, Ivan, for your time, for your insight, and for sharing your incredible stories and invaluable ideas. We really do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I would like to thank you, lastly, the audience, for your attendance. I hope this talk has been one for the books and something that will leave you with a positive taste to finish off your week strong. So on that note, stay safe, stay tuned, and all the best. Thanks, and have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.